Well, we've got a full class today. It's a beautiful thing. And it also happens to be the day there's food. So I'm sure those things don't coincide at all. But I'm so glad everybody's here. We have got to get started. So if you're eating, great. Normally we will go through and read just as clarification. And we always have that fun moment in days when we eat, because somebody gets to their turn in reading and they're so to not surprise anyone, and you can take bites and stop taking bites at appropriate times, we'll just go around the room so you know when your turn to read is coming up. Today's chapter is a little bit shorter, which kind of works out nicely for it being a food day, because it kind of always puts us a couple minutes back. But we're just going to be walking through Genesis 8, and as always, we can kind of talk and communicate with one another. This class is a little bit more like an open forum than a lecture, but I just have noted some points to talk about. If you have ideas or things that you know, by all means, let's share with the group. So let's go ahead and... Who did Cain marry? Now, there are people in our class today that are attending my class tonight, so I will answer that later. But I will tell you that's one of the few questions I actually had to mark some answers wrong on. I'm going to tell you an answer I marked wrong, and then I need you to tell me why it's wrong, okay? Someone wrote down he married his cousin. Why could he not have married his cousin?
He didn't have his brother was dead.
No. Cain's cousin. Why could he not have married his cousin?
But Adam and Eve have brothers and sisters?
Nope. That's the problem. And so a couple people wrote cousin. Unfortunately, I marked it wrong. And so if anyone, thinks about that, don't write down cousin. Okay. Exactly. Yep. But we won't talk about that right now, because that's a totally different thing. But seeing as how somebody asked me, don't write cousin. All right. So Genesis chapter 8, verses 1 through 22 is what we're going to do. We're going to do prayer requests at the end. And I see a couple people I don't recognize. What's your names? Linda and George? All right, thank you guys for coming. We're going to start down here. Melinda, we'll start with you if you want to read verse 1. And we'll come up the right side, so just be prepared.
Okay. It said, and God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters sway?
I would say assuaged is probably the correct pronunciation there.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So, important things to note. This would have been probably a really scary moment for Noah. I mean, he's sitting there in an ark. It's been raining for 40 days. He's waiting to get to a point where he can get out. Everything outside of him is covered in water and has perished. And so this is not necessarily a great place to be. But it says God remembered Noah. And so I want to just clarify that God remembers us when we're in difficult moments in life, when it may seem like the world is ending, or for all intents and purposes for Noah, it really was. God isn't gone in those moments. He's still there, and he remembers us.
I was wondering, is he ever going to stop the rain?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some points there. I don't know if God told him on the forefront, this is how long this is going to happen. And I would say probably not, based upon later in this chapter and how he decides he's going to figure out if the waters are gone. But it would have been really interesting. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. So with that, God here uses wind to start to remove the waters from the appropriate areas. God does this pretty regularly. This is the same way he opened the Red Sea up in Exodus to where the people could walk through. God seems to have affinity for using the wind to do his bidding. pretty cool in that sense. But verse 2, go ahead and start up, Carolyn. Wah, 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 wah.
Didn't work.
I tried.
Mountains also, the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained.
Okay. Seems like this should be pretty straightforward. If you want water to go down, you have to stop adding water. So God made it to where, that it was no longer raining. It was finally being restrained. And, after 40 days and nights of raining, I'm sure everybody said, amen. I don't know about you guys. I do not love the rain to the point that I'd want to live somewhere that it was raining that much. That's why you'll never find me in the Amazon or in Serbia or somewhere really cold, because that's not my life either.
Guess where you going?
Serbia.
Montana.
I spent 5 years in Montana, actually. I did. It's beautiful. Huh? What did you say, where in Montana?
Did you say Montana?
Yep. Yeah, so we lived in, my grandparents are from Ennis, Montana. We lived in Bozeman for a couple years. And I think we lived in, now I got to think about this. I think we lived in Butte for a year or two. And then we moved here, or not here, moved to Indiana and then here. So, and then I get to go visit all kinds of places because I'm a military brat. So, yes, sir.
Looking at this, 7 verse 24 says that the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days.
Yeah.
So 110 days after the rain stopped, the water was still prevailing and rising,
Yeah.
which asks the question, where's the water coming from?
I would say that it talked about the deep opening up and water coming through, and so I would say the waters were coming from underneath and above. So even after it stopped raining, maybe there was still more time it was raising due to the water underneath still moving.
Probably was.
Yeah.
Probably was. There's also a tremendous amount of geologic work that's going on.
Yeah.
Ocean basins that weren't there before are beginning to form because water has to have some place to run to.
Right.
And mountains are being raised up because if you push in on a plastic ball on one side, the other side's gonna bulge out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part of the flood, I think, that a lot of folks don't really think about, is that the whole earth had to be reshaped to account for all of this water that was now on the surface.
Yeah. Well, and the Earth seemingly would have been one landmass before this too, and this would have probably been the event that split it all up.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at Europe and Africa and see how they were going.
Well, it also,
And it just kind of fit.
yeah, it also brings up the question of age of the earth.
Yeah.
If present science suggests that all of these processes that happened have happened at the same rate, essentially, that they're happening today,
Yeah.
then the earth has to be very old for all this stuff to have happened.
Right.
But if the Bible is correct, basically, this was all going on in about a year's time.
Yeah.
But for, I saw remember I told you about the sediment, where I saw, in that, they start out walking through a canyon that looks like the Grand Canyon, but it's Mount St. Helens. And that's how quick it formed.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how that would definitely happen. So, verse 3. Jerry, are you good to read verse 3 for us?
Sure, especially after my wife points out where it is.
There we go.
And the waters return from on the earth continually, and after the end of the 50 days, the waters were abated.
Yeah, so it took 5 months to abate the water. You've got a continual draining. Now, you have to understand, earlier in Genesis it said that even the tops of the mountains were covered by decent amount of water. It's pretty incredible. So the water is going to take time. This isn't like oh, hey, the water's there, the water's gone. This wasn't like a Jesus said stop and the waves stopped. Like it took time, it drained, it moved into new locations where it would stay. And then when you look at different parts of the scripture, God talks about how he set bars for the ocean, essentially. He gave it a place where it would go and no farther. God planned where, even today, where the water should stop and where it will be. So it's a beautiful thing. Verse 4.
And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat.
Yep, so it says the ark rested on the 7th month on the mountains of Ararat. So the 7th month, the ark rested on the mountains. Note that this is not a singular mountain. Some people, in searching for the ark, try to go to Mount Ararat, which they would say did not necessarily exist prior to the flood. So it was one that would have come up after. And so you have to determine where exactly the ark would have landed, where it would have been. Now, the location is something that's talked about a lot. It's questioned often. The modern-day mountain of Ararat seems, like I said, to have been formed after, but it may be nearby that mountain in that range in a similar area. So some have claimed to have found the ark. Somebody in Turkey said they found it. Someone in Iran. Basically, there's like 12 places. People are like, hey, I found the ark. Yeah. You know, I did hear that once. No wonder. Now I found it. I didn't know Kentucky was part of this Bible story. All right. Now, some have claimed, like I said, the ark's in different areas. I actually wrote down some of the places that people say they found the ark in different times they've made the claim. So the U.S. Air Force and a reconnaissance mission took a black and white image of the north side of Mount Ararat in 1949 that they said would have been potentially the ark. It said it revealed a large object that resembled a portion of a ship. These images were made public in 1995. They waited almost 50 years to make them public. But that sparked further interest. It made people want to go out, want to look there, want to determine like what's going on in this area. Another time was the Ahura Gorge, and it says it's 1 mile below the peak of Ararat is the Ahura Gorge. And this site gained popularity when George Hagapian, an Armenian, which by the way is right there as well, claimed his uncle took him to the top of the ark when he was a boy in around 1908. So you definitely have that claim, but even throughout his lifetime, he was not able to pinpoint the location of where he went. So unless this is the thing where he was just a child and couldn't find it again, maybe it's a fish story, I don't know. An ark story, I guess. All right. There is an undisclosed Nami site. So a Turkish guide, Ahmet Ertuğrul, supposedly found compartments of the ark's interior in the south side of Mount Ararat. He took photographs in 2008 and reported them to Nami, which is a Hong Kong-based ministry. Now, as we go through this, you'll hear a lot of different people saying, hey, we found the ark, hey, we found the ark. I want to just start off by saying none of those have been substantiated at this point, although there are lots of people in different places saying they found it. There's also Duru Pinar. If you guys have better Middle Eastern language skills than I do, I'll let you guys say the next few. But heavy rains exposed a large arc-shaped formation in 1948. This would have been approximately 15 miles from the summit. A 1960 expedition found only dirt and rocks, but the explorer Ron Wyatt went back in the 70s and 80s and claiming he found an outline of metal fittings using a frequency generator. In case anyone knows what that is. There's also Mount Cuddy or Mount Judy, or however you pronounce that. Maybe it's Cootie and Judy, I'm not sure. So some ancient writers said people could still see the ark in New Testament times at Mount Cootie, as an expedition found wood in 1953 that encouraged further expeditions. And let's finish out with Mount Saluiman. A veteran named Ed Davis claimed he saw the remains of Noah's Ark while he was stationed in Iran during World War II. Later expeditions claimed to find beam-like rocks in the mountain. So, these are all different claims in different places. And so I would say they can't all be right unless it's, in pieces. What I would like to maybe put forth is something else to think about is Ararat is a volcanic mountain and has gone off multiple times since this would have happened. So the question then becomes, do we believe we can even find the ark, and would it still be intact? What are your thoughts?
When God wants us to, we will.
That's the only reasonable answer.
But if it's volcanic too, and lava is very hot, and if it touched the wood, it would burn the wood up. So,
Sure.
if that's the case, then we would not find it.
But only if it's a lava-producing volcano.
It has erupted a couple times, yes.
Well, Mount St. Helens erupted too, but didn't produce any magma. Produced lots and lots of ash.
Okay.
Tremendous-
That's a good point.
Tremendous
In case it
explosive
solidified
force,
around it.
but no. And on the other side, Mauna Loa in Hawaii produces lava flows on a fairly frequent basis. Doesn't produce much ash. So, what type of volcano is Ararat? That's another question.
That's a good question. So here's another thought, though. If, the world has seemingly been destroyed for, 150 days, and you start building again, what do you use?
You use the ark.
Some people think that the ark would have been disassembled and used for building projects. Some people think the ark may have been left intact, but you've got all kinds of good wood right there. Why not? So it really depends. Maybe the ark's intact, maybe it's not. We don't have a way to know for sure, and we haven't found it for sure. And so it could be based on geographical differences. What they may have called Mount Ararat may not be what we know as Mount Ararat. It may still be there and just not be the right place that we're looking. So those are all really interesting things that could happen. But we don't know. I did hear some people say that general wood decay would have caused the ark to be in pieces by now, at best. So I'm not somebody who studies trees, so I don't know that for sure, but
Yeah, but it's at such a high altitude too. It could be preserved, but
Yeah.
what doesn't fit for me too is the bringing back an olive branch. So
So
how
there
does
have to have
that,
been trees.
something,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know if God was supernaturally,
well, I guess that leaves the question, does it mean he had to have plucked it off a planted tree that was still upright, or could it have, been floating in the water, and after it, subsided on the ground, he picked it up and just showed him, hey, there's ground here. Did he?
Olive trees could propagate from rootstock too.
Yeah,
A piece of root that floats around and ends up in fertile soil,
right,
it's gonna sprout. So,
yeah. So that's a good point too.
if it had been a Douglas fir that he brought back a needle from, that can't propagate without a mature tree,
Right,
that would be something. But an olive tree can propagate a whole olive tree from nothing but a piece of root.
right.
So,
Good point. So it talks about the waters decrease continually until about the 10th month. It says, and in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So in the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen. I just read somebody's thing, and I don't know whose it was. All right. Somebody go ahead and read. Oh, let's go ahead and talk about that. The ship was 40 to 50 feet tall. It would have been, I don't remember how high it said above the mountains. Now I got to think about it. What was it, 15 cubits? Is that what it said?
15 feet above it.
I don't think it would have used feet as a measurement,
No,
though.
I made the conversion.
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
I can't.
Gotta convert, I can't think in cubits.
What? All right. Well, I'm trying to find the part where it says it. Let's go. How high was it above the mountains? Let's go back. The waters prevailed, increasing greatly. The whole heavens were covered. 15 cubits upward did the mountains prevail, and the mountains were covered. Okay, so the idea seems to be 15 cubits above the mountains, maybe. So if that's 18 inches apiece, or if they use a different cubit measurement, because some people do, like the royal cubit is 20.4, essentially you've got a good bit of distance. So it would have been
You got 20 feet.
somewhere in the round of 20 to 30 feet that the waters would have been above the mountains. So if you get to the point you can see the mountaintops, the water's been dropping. The water's been dropping. And it says mountain seen, so not all mountains are the same height, so you could assume it probably dropped more than 20 feet. But they started seeing mountain ranges. I just put out a guesstimate of 40 to 50 feet. I'm just thinking about how tall the ark is, and I'm like, if it's scooted down this much, how is... But
Divided into about 22 feet between, the water and the mountains.
yeah,
That's still a lot of water.
it is. And so it's going down, it's getting there. But it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened up the window to the ark, which he had made. Keep in mind, 40 days is a good time frame. Usually it's a time of testing. So he wants to test how high the waters are. Verse 7.
And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth.
Verse 8.
Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground.
I've never heard an answer for this, and I'm curious if you guys have. Does anyone know why he sent two different birds? He sent a raven the first time, and then he was like, well, how about a dove? Do you have an idea?
Yeah.
What is it?
In fact, it's a fairly simple explanation. Ravens are carrion birds. If there's anything floating, a raven doesn't have any problem landing there, eating what's there, and moving on.
Mm.
Doves, on the other hand, you ever watched a dove walk?
No, I
On
haven't.
the ground? Well, they walk fairly awkwardly, so they need a place to land.
Mm.
They prefer dry places. So sending out a raven, I think Noah realized that probably wasn't the best choice.
He's
He
like,
sent
here, a
out-
bird.
Sent out a bird that would actually bring you some useful information.
There you go. Pretty cool. All right, we just read verse 8, is that right? So verse 9.
But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark.
All right, so the dove found no rest. So just like you said, needs somewhere to stand. So the dove flew back.
You even said that for the sole of her feet.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about doves, so I was just like, well, all right, well.
It just goes with what he said. I'm sure
I
it
know,
means
it
something.
goes great. All right, let's see. If I continue down this side, that table's not going to get to go. What? Come on.
We're over 30.
All right, go ahead, Tyler.
And he stayed yet other 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark.
So he realized that was the better decision. He's keeping with it this time. All right. Verse 11.
And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth.
Yep. So 7 days, another 7 days. Dove found a leaf. Fantastic news. There's got to be getting something. The waters are going away. Verse 12.
And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more.
That's because he knew he was going to get sacrificed. I'm just throwing it out there. That dove was the smart dove. He took off. But he couldn't have gone too far because he can only propagate a little with the other ones that get left. So I'm just saying, that one was the intelligent one that said, I know that there are clean animals on this ship. Anyway, stayed another week. This time the dove didn't come back. Verse 13.
And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry.
Happy New Year.
Woo! First month, first day, new year, new me. Just kidding. New year, new planet is kind of what it seems like, but
He didn't make a deck so he could walk around the top?
I don't know what's going on there. All right, so it said the waters were dried up from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. So it looks dry. That was not enough information for Noah. I'm just throwing it out there. Go to verse 14.
And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried.
So he waited almost 2 full months.
I'm assuming it's a little muddy.
That's what I was going to say. It may have looked a little dry, but I'm not touching that. That's for sure. I bet it was muddy. I don't blame him for waiting all that time either. I think that was the right decision.
I bet it was still draining for years afterwards.
Yeah. I bet the land was fertile, though.
Oh,
Goodness.
yeah.
Now, it says, And God spake unto Noah, saying, this is probably one of the weird short verses that I'm like, why did they cut the verse right there? God spake unto Noah, saying, what? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Verse 16.
Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee.
Yep. So, again, these kids are not babies. They have wives. They would have been working on the ark with their father, but this is only Noah's 601st year. The first time you're introduced to Noah is when he's 500, and that's when he starts having his kids. So, yeah, he just decided later on he'd like to have a couple. And he had 3 relatively quickly, I guess. So,
Got himself a young wife.
hey, I know something about that. All right.
Not that much younger than you.
All right. Verse 16 we just read, 17.
Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, and of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth.
Praise the Lord. Food is coming back. All right. So you kind of get the creation mandate all over again. Everything's made. God says, go, be fruitful, multiply. Here you go. This is almost like attempt number 2 at the Garden of Eden, but a little soggy, I guess. Now, there's a problem because in the Garden of Eden, we already had the fall of mankind. And so although these people survived from the ark, although they had the grace of God, Noah found grace in the eyes of God, he's still an imperfect person. And paradise lost doesn't get regained just because there's been a lot of water. So all the animals are going to come back again. We asked this a couple times. We noted maybe God got rid of a lot of the animals too, so that when Adam and his sons came back, they weren't overrun with animals. Because God could have ended life in a way that didn't affect the animals. God didn't necessarily have to flood the earth. He chose to do that, and he chose to do it that way. But God could have, caused a plague that only affect mankind, but he didn't. And he purposefully got rid of the animals too, except for the ones on the ark. So there must be a reason for that. Going forward, where are we at? Verse 18. Go ahead.
And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him.
Well, hey, God said go, and he said, all right. I don't blame him for staying until God said go. I think that was the wise decision. What? It's the biggest house anyone's got.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of animals and a bunch of doo-doo.
You mean it smells?
But then the animals were out, so.
Well, at this point, verse 19.
Every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds, went forth out of the ark.
So the people and the animals finally left. So I'm just imagining like a 2x2 walk file out because that's how it always. But it's incredible how God, obviously He's in charge of creation. He's in charge of the animals. But if I was reading back, because I missed week 7 with you guys, Cam did that for me, hopefully. He said you guys were great. He loves that you guys talk because he's normally with teenagers and college kids, and he said they don't do that. At least not when they're supposed to. So he was pretty excited because he's like, this worked out great. I appreciate it too, but think about that. God supernaturally moved the animals to go into the ark, and He supernaturally brought them out of the ark. He kept them from eating each other while in the ark. That's a feat all in and of itself. But it's incredible how God worked all these things together. So verse 20.
All right. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to this? I feel like I did an okay job. I feel like I didn't do too bad. Alex should be back next week.
Is everything okay?
As far as I've heard, everything's good. I haven't heard any bad. So.
An altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings unanointed.
So here's why it mattered that He brought 7 of some of the animals. Because He's getting rid of some. Here's a question though. The law isn't out yet. How does He know what's a clean animal?
How did he know all the other stuff he knew? God told him.
Sure.
Yeah, obviously.
Well, but
But I thought you said, Adam didn't die until before Noah.
yep, he would have known all of his progeny through Seth up until Noah.
And I believe that story about Cain and Abel probably passed around a couple of times.
What?
Right?
All right.
So, I mean, before the truly written Sumerians, whatever language, right? We had that oral tradition of passing down stories. So I'm sure Noah heard what about clean, unclean, and whatever.
Well-
What's acceptable to God, what's not.
And I just think it's interesting. I feel like people sometimes think God created random standards at Sinai, but that's not the case. And I think there are a lot of these things that already existed and people already somewhat knew because they were delivered and told at some point in time prior. And so God doesn't change, and God doesn't just randomly decide one day, hey, this might work. And so it's really interesting. You can see some of the things had already been working in the people, like Abraham tithed. Why? Well, because God had already put that in their hearts and their minds, and they knew that was a right thing to do. And I don't know how He always did that. We don't know. We don't know if there were things that were passed down or what was passed down that helped them know that. But obviously there was information they had that know, hey, these are clean animals. Bring 7 of these. That way we can sacrifice them when it's all said and done. And I don't even know if He sacrificed all the extras. Maybe those ones just needed more to propagate. Maybe He sacrificed 3 and there were 4 of those. I don't know. It just depends on what God meant for them to do, which is kind of, again, He's incredible. So, verse 21.
And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every thing living as I have done.
Yeah. So praise the Lord. We don't have to worry about another flood. It's a good thing because I'm not a very good boat builder. I'm just throwing it out there. I guess I'm hoping that if...
How are you about dancing with fire?
Are you a fire walker?
Dancing, bad. Letting it blow up in my face, I seem to do okay. in case anyone missed that story, while I was on paternity leave, it was like the day after we had our baby, I decided I was going to go put my grill up and make some burgers because, you know, it's 50 degrees. It was a nice day.
And you're a man.
And I like to grill if I have to cook. So I thought that was going to be a great option. Well, I'm not a smart man, apparently. So my grill has never had any problems at all with the igniter. It's always worked perfectly. So you just turn the propane on, turn it to the right setting, hit the igniter, it goes whoosh, and everything's great. Well, I noticed I didn't hear the whoosh sound. But we cover our grill, because I don't like to clean things, so we covered it with tin foil and whatnot, and so that way we had a nice surface to lay everything on. And so I'm like, all right, well, I can't see what's going on, so my smart idea is, let's go ahead and lift this and keep pressing the igniter button. Let's see if it's sparking. Well, it is. And I saw that right before it went whoosh. So,
Still have all your eyebrows.
no. You don't understand. I have thick eyebrows, and this is half of them. I had to shave my face because I was missing a good portion of right here. All of my eyelashes are about half the size they were. And I do, and I did also slightly burn my corneas, but I'm okay. I did. So, in case anyone wonders, I will not be using the igniter button anymore. I'm going to get a long lighter, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to know it's working, because I'm not going to do this. I might actually do this. So no. So I sat there for a minute. I went and I like cooled off my face and what? Scared my wife. She's like, I don't understand what just happened. So she's sitting down with a fresh baby. And she already wasn't feeling good. She had done some clotting when she gave birth, and so she wasn't feeling good. She's still not great, by the way. If you could continue to pray for her, she doesn't have her energy back for the most part. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I'm okay. Like, I can see. I'm okay. My face hurts. But, like, let's put water on it. And so I'm like, do I need to go anywhere? And so my mom used to kind of work in the medical field. So I'm like, hey, Mom. She's like, what's up? I'm like, so I don't know the right way to describe this. I kind of, like, blew something up in my face. And she's like, okay. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I think so. She's like, okay, you probably ought to go get that checked out. She's like, you should get a salve or something to put on it, so you need to go to the hospital. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll go to the hospital. I wasn't going to go. So I went to the hospital. They didn't give me a salve. They made me sit there for like 2 hours. Now, I was in a room. They immediately took me into a room. But the only thing they gave me for my face was wet washcloths. So I was like dabbing wet washcloths on my face. They wanted, I know, I'm like, why did I go here? My eyes are fine. I drove myself to the hospital. I could see. Anyway. You're right, but it still hurts. All right, anyway. This is really off topic. Point is, if anyone's wondering about the fire comment, lit my face on fire, we're good. I only had 2 blisters, and they're gone.
That's great.
Lord is good. Yeah, we don't talk about that. I'm naming it Bruno officially. All right. So, praise the Lord. He's not going to smite the world in water again. Unfortunately, is fire, which apparently is my nemesis. So, but you get a picture here. God also notes the world's not going to always go on this way. Read verse 22.
While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease.
Yeah, so...
Seems to refute global warming, doesn't it?
Well,
That one verse.
that's what I was going to say. I said, actually, it's in the notes. It says, take that, global warming.
That's what I got written in my Bible anyway.
Anyway, so here's the note. I think global warming forgets the fact that there's also a global cooling that happens. There's a heat and a freeze cycle that happens. But God is not going to get rid of cold and heat, summer and winter, seed time and harvest. It's going to keep going until the world ends, which he notes. So he's already telling people the world is not going to go this way forever. It's going to end. It will be judged again, this time not in water, but in fire. So beautiful thing. God obviously is showing graciousness to these people. He's showing he will have a people, even though there is time and judgment, and God will continue to have a people, and we get to see that open up as we walk through Genesis. All right, so that's the lesson for today.
Maybe you thought your grill was